And
Okay.
yeah, and I believe I just started the recording.
Okay.
So take over there you go. Excellent.
So you can see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So where we are at, we have purchased, our big project is in Jamaica. We're trying to, we're developing products, and if we can sell some in the U.S., that's fine. I encourage people to use them. We have ordered solar panels from Jamaica. Last I heard, they were in Panama on their way to Jamaica. I don't know if they've been unloaded in Jamaica or not. But that's 100, I got 120 watt panels for basically the same price as 100 watt panels. I spent 3 weeks down there in July. We put together an excellent group of people down there. It's about 6 people is the core of it. And the plan is to market a package of solar products, including probably 2 different sizes of solar cookers, some small water pumps. Robert Van Buskirk, who's working in Malawi, played out some pumps from Faili that he's been using. That's a Chinese company. We've dealt with Faili a little bit, so we're going to distribute their pumps, I think. And then maybe lithium battery boxes, small DC fans, nickel-iron battery boxes. I'm not sure what we're going to be able to afford, but up front, we're going to have certainly solar cookers and motor pumping systems to be able to set up front. One, there's quite a few issues to weigh. Jamaica is culturally very influenced by the United States. Everybody you meet down there has family.
Alexis, yes. Can I interrupt you? So
yes.
You are loud, but kind of muffled.
Okay.
And, yeah, and so I don't know if you can improve that because you may not have a microphone that you can change.
Is that any better?
Little bit.
Okay.
It's still pretty muffled, and so maybe I just ask that you slow down. And okay. Yeah, and I think what I'm hearing is that you're importing solar panels from Jamaica, and you have an excellent group of people. And so you're importing solar panels into Jamaica from China. And you're getting 120 watt solar panels for the cost of 100 watt panels. And you have an excellent group in Jamaica making solar cookers that they're going to combine with water pumps and maybe lighting systems. I forget.
Yes. I don't think we can afford the lighting systems up front, but we can certainly do solar cookers and water pumps. And I'm going to set them up with some metal fabrication equipment. The whole issue of what kind of solar cookers to build or what kind of battery boxes for the lighting kits gets very complicated. But it seems like the cheapest way to do it, if you want to do a lot of them, is to buy the metal fabrication equipment, and then you can make your own boxes. You can make all sorts of things out of metal. So we're going to take that. Yes.
Could you try turning the microphone down even more and see if that helps?
Okay. Yep. How's that? So we're sending down. Is that any better?
Maybe.
Okay. Maybe I'll try a better mic in the future. So yeah, we're going to send down a bunch of parts, equipment, as well as tooling. They are incorporating, we've been working through the Source Farm, but we're incorporating a separate nonprofit to work on this project. So what I've been doing back in the US is trying to figure out what kind of solar cooker. We're trying to balance the demands of efficiency, cost, and something that people are actually willing to buy. We sent down 10 of the bucket cookers, the pearl cookers, but what I've been told is nobody's going to buy those. They don't want them. They work okay, but people don't want to pay for them. I think it comes back to they want something that looks nicer. So that's what we're trying to do. Honestly, it seems like we're going to be able to build something, box cookers, what I call Roxys, for a similar price to the bucket cookers anyway. And another big issue for us, because at Living Energy Farm, I don't know if Owen's made it back there, he saw our systems, but we have a very integrated system at Living Energy Farm where we can use one energy source to do a lot of different things. And that can have some big advantages, particularly, so if you look at a solar cooker with a 100-watt panel, it works okay, but it doesn't work at all in cloudy weather or partly cloudy weather. It really assassinates it. Whereas our higher voltage, bigger systems work pretty well in cloudy weather. The problem, of course, is that poor people, low-income people, can't afford bigger systems. So what we're trying to do is to find a moderately sized, somewhat larger system. In other words, to use the same set of solar panels to pump water, to run fans, to run solar cookers. So your cost, there'll be a little bit higher upfront cost, but it'll give you a much stronger system, and then it'll have much better performance in less than optimal weather. That's kind of how we're thinking, and maybe we'll have 2 or 3 different sizes. We're working all this out.
Alexis.
Yes.
Are these on grid, or they have no grid electricity, these folks?
So in Jamaica, there's a lot of people who have no grid electricity at all. Jamaica is a very mountainous country, and they're very steep mountains. They have strung power lines all over the place, but the power company is universally loathed. People hate the power company. The bills are very high and very volatile. They will increase the bills even when usage goes down. It's a lot of people die from stealing power. One of our work crew down there who was helping us install some equipment had personally seen 2 people die from trying to steal power off of high voltage wires. So there's a lot of, there's a strong demand. The water pumps too, they use a lot of surface water, not so much well water. And there's both for drinking water as well as for small scale gardens and farms, small farms. The pumps, the small pumps, 12 volt, 24, 60 volt, up to that range, seem like they're going to be have a huge impact. So that's what I'm talking about bundling. Like if we can give somebody a 24 volt or 48 volt kit that has, kind of a micro irrigation system and a solar cooker and a few other things put together, that seems like that's going to be our best way to go about it.
Yeah. And I think you should definitely add a 5 volt USB charging port if you can.
Sure. Well, the battery boxes have that built in anyway, but yeah, if we can do that cheap on the side. So in terms of actual construction details, I'll just walk through what we've been doing. One thing we noticed that we were crimping, we've been making nichrome wire burners, and the crimp connectors we were using on those, that's right in the middle of the screen, those little silver connectors weren't standing up to the heat. So we started soldering everything. We stripped the copper wire, dip it in soldering flux, then we crimp it just to hold it in place. This shows a torch, soldering the wire. Soldering iron's probably a little more elegant. I wanted to come up with a way to make burners that, if we're going to make different size burners, the 12 volt burners are easier to make because it's a shorter length of wire. But if you get into higher voltage or higher power, you need more wire. It's really kind of hard to do that, to get that wire to bed in a little piece of cement. We did what I call the radiant burners, but they're really slow to build. So I was trying to find a faster way to do it. So we have the metal bending tools. So we just take a piece of metal. We're just going to make a rectangle out of it. So we notch it on one side, cut it on the other side. I'll put it in a sheet metal brake, bend it to a T-shaped that looks like that. And then we bend it around into a rectangle. And then that allows me to screw it down to a piece of wood. The wood is temporary, and then I can pop a bunch of screws in rows and very quickly and easily string the nichrome wire back and forth between the screws. And then we lay down a little bit of cement. Now we're using refractory cement, which I think is quite a bit cheaper than the furnace cement, although the furnace cement would work. Of course, Portland is also cheap relatively, or in volume. And then the wood comes off, the screws come back out. We lay another final layer of cement over the top of it. So I think if you lined up and you were doing 10 or 15 of these at a time, you could do them very quickly and efficiently. That's the intention anyway. So that's the new way we're building burners. And those are the finished products. The top one is a burner with 64 inches of wire in it for 48 volt cooker. The bottom one is just a regular 12 volt, 24 inch wire cooker burner. That is.
I want to interrupt you again, just to say that if someone is trying to keep up with you here, you made a 20-minute video that covers all the details in that. And I posted the link on our website, on the research website that I just put in the chat. So you can see that in all its gory detail to see exactly how Alexis put that together. Continue, Alexis. Thank you.
Yes, that was filmed by a very charming French film crew we had here who's going to be producing some more films too. So anyway, it looks like for us in Jamaica, Roxy cookers are what we're going to build. So we bend up a square pan to make the bottom. Now this first set of pictures is for the biggest Roxy cooker that we built at LEF, Living Energy Farm. We're not going to be building them this big in Jamaica, I don't think. This one is a full voltage cooker, high voltage. So we're actually using uncut stove burners. And we put 3 of them in a row so we could run 1 burner, 2 burner, or 3 burners, depending on how much power we want to push into it. So this is a really fancy cooker that took probably 20 or 25 hours to build. But it's a full-sized oven, and that one cooker by itself cooks 2 meals a day. It does 80% of our cooking now for a dozen people year-round, because we can use it in the wintertime too, in cool weather. So we're also making some more moderately sized cookers. This was our prototype 48-volt cooker. Welder's blanket over the top, same metal base. That's got the radiant, the burner with the radiant beads in the bottom of it. The welder's blanket worked okay, but it's kind of floppy and heavy and not all that cheap. So I found some much thinner Aramid. I don't want to use flammable cloth. With these cookers, everything we build, everything that goes into it doesn't burn. So it's, it's Rockwell in the bottom, sheet metal, and then Aramid. This blue Aramid, we call this Blue Roxy. This is a pretty cheap cooker to build. It's slightly smaller. I mean, it's 12 by 12, so it'll fit 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches. That's the top of it. So the top sits on that bottom. This one doesn't have the burner mounted in it yet. So that shows it sitting upright. That's a pretty cheap cooker to build because the sheet metal is not terribly expensive. The Rockwell, that Aramid cloth, it's a thinner cloth. It's about like a bed sheet kind of a cloth, but it doesn't burn, even if you put a torch to it.
Alexis, and that Aramid, that's just fiberglass. Is that right?
Aramid, evidently there's a bunch of different kinds of Aramid. And I don't know actually the chemical relationship between fiberglass and all the different kinds of Aramid. That's kind of out of my league. All I know is it's a pretty tough, fire-resistant cloth. And I seem to be able to get it cheaper in the US than I can get it in China. So I think this Blue Roxy here is going to be our low-end cooker in Jamaica. The most expensive part of it's actually the Rockwell. The cloth and the metal are pretty cheap, and the burner is pretty cheap, takes some time to build. I built another version of that same cooker with a metal outer covering, which is, in the lower part of this picture, and that's it standing upright. But that cooker actually gets to be kind of heavy. That whole lid gets up near 20 pounds, which is not bad if you're a strong person, but if you're thinking about selling these to all sorts of people of all sorts of sizes and shapes, having to lift a 20-pound lid gets to be a bit much. And it's more expensive. So I don't think we're going to build that one. I think Blue Roxy, and then what we're calling Roxy Deluxe, which is this one at the bottom, that's the inside of it, that's the outside of it. It's basically a metal cooker, Rockwell cooker, but with a removable door. This one is going to be more expensive, so this will be kind of our high-end cooker. A slightly larger box. It'll take really, it's good size. The limitation on this one, or the problem is it takes more skill to make it, and it takes more time. I've got about 12 hours maybe in building the prototype, which we can probably get down to about 6 hours when we start building more of them. So this is what we call Roxy Deluxe. Removable front lid, looks kind of like a little oven. Could be run anywhere from 12 volts, 100 watts on up to a few hundred watts at least. This one is set up at 300 watts at 48 volts, and it works great. It looks great. The problem is this will be more for sort of middle class consumers, and we'll try to make that Blue Roxy more for lower income consumers. I wanted to do one even cheaper. What I wanted to do was a bucket style cooker, but with a nicer looking bucket, like with maybe a big metal pot. And that would be fast. The problem is I can't get the pots cheap enough. Start looking. I noticed you guys had done taken my pearl cooker and made that into like a 10-gallon cooker. The problem is I can't make one of those cheap enough. If I start looking at 30, 40 quart pots, even bringing them in from China, the pot alone is like $40.
Which pot are you talking about? The outer pot?
Yes, the outer pot. That's the inner pot's not so hard. You got more options there. But what I'm being told that people in Jamaica don't want some ugly plastic thing on their counter. So if I could find something that looks good.
Well, what if you just curved the sheet metal into a cylinder?
Well, that's easier said than done. It's actually easier to make a rectangle than a cylinder, and that pretty much gets you back to the blue Roxy. That's how we ended up there. Right angles are easier to do homemade. If you've got, industrial stamping machinery where you can stamp out cylinders, the problem is you can make the cylinder. What you can't make is the top or the bottom for the cylinder. Making that curved connection, you end up with something really ragged unless you got some really fancy machinery. Something like Blue Roxy is what we end up with. And I think that's good enough. I mean, it's not quite as cheap as I want it to be. Although if we can find, I was just pricing out the rock wool. The bat rock wool is quite a bit cheaper than the board rock wool. So maybe we'll just use the bat rock wool and we can do it that way and bring down the cost. But I think we can do a box cheaper than we can do a bucket cooker is what it looks like. I was shocked at the shipping price, even at like 1,000 units, bringing in pots from China. The problem is the pots are so big, they take up a lot of room. You ran into these, $10,000, $15,000 bill to try to bring in pots, and we just can't do that. So this sheet metal we can actually get in Jamaica, and it's not free, but it's not bad. It's much cheaper to buy sheet metal and bend it into a rectangle than it is to buy a big old pot, basically. So that's where we're at. I think we're going to be in production down there, certainly in November, sometime in November, 1st of November, somewhere between the 1st and the end of November, we will be selling, I think, pumps and cookers of various sizes. That's what I got.
All right. What I might ask you to do is if you could send me the URLs for your refractory cement, the Aramid, and any of the other things that are kind of, important.
Sure. Yeah. You could, we did a prototype of those boxes down there without the sheet metal tools. You can basically, if you've got the sheet metal, you can clamp it down on a table with a 2x4 and whack on it with a hammer. You can do it that way. It's just not, it's really kind of unpleasant. You can end up with something that doesn't look too bad. It doesn't look as good as the professional tools. But yeah, I'll send you the links for the Aramid and the other stuff.
Thank you. Any questions for Alexis from you all? All right, how about we have an update from Salma? Do you have an update for us?
Hey, hello, Peter. Good evening. I don't have a particular update on the work we are doing. My technician or the person who is in charge of building our machine is not around for this time to go back to Logan. So we are waiting for him to try to compress our sawdust to see what we get from the machine. So from to now, we don't do anything special to talk about. Thank you.
Okay. So please mute yourself again, Salma. Salma, please mute yourself.
You want me to?
Yeah. Great. So Salma, what I think you said is you don't have an update because you're waiting for information from one of the people you're working with. And you mentioned something about building a compressor. I know that we have talked about this. You're trying to compress organic matter into making pots, which is something that might interest Alexis. Did I get everything, Martin, or did you understand something that I missed?
No, that's what he said.
Great. Excellent. I'm just going to write that down. Waiting for coworkers to give updates. Trying to compress organic matter for shell. So I can respond to that a little bit. I have worked with, and I'm now engaged with a company that they are compressing like rice hulls or any kind of organic waste. And they compress it with a glue and they can make like wooden structures from them. And so that might be of interest to build the outer shell. Now you can't build the insulation with that because it will burn unless you mix it with refractory cement and do something like Peter Keller does with his clay. And I think that is something we will investigate, is using refractory cement, for instance, rice hulls. And then what would happen is the part closest to the ISEC would burn the rice hulls away, but they would be held in place with the refractory cement. So it's just an area of study for us. Any thoughts on that, Peter?
Peter, you're muted.
Look for the little microphone in the lower left, Peter, to unmute yourself.
Go. I am unmuted now. Yeah, I was just saying that insulation is basically getting dead air. And so however you can do that, but you, as I say, you don't want that to burn. So you got to balance those two things. Yeah. And if there's any stress on it, you don't want it to be breakable.
Right. Right. Okay, great. We're happy to see Bijanga here, and maybe Bijanga and Raphael can give us an update on what's going on for them.
Hello, everybody. Bijanga is around. Last weekend, we worked, I and Raphael, and shared our ISEC experiences. Worked on connecting solar panels to the ISEC, checking the current from the panels to the ISEC, and did many things. And you know, Raphael is a professional electrician, and he gave us a good hand because we have a big project to launch and we needed that. So we sent you a report along with the pictures. I hope that you saw it.
Great. Okay. Yeah, Tristan just put some chat Aircrete. Yeah, we had a student look into Aircrete. It's difficult to make. It's not inexpensive. But his ultimate conclusion was it's block wool. Yeah. I should also announce that, and I think a lot of you know, that the Cal Poly school begins in a week and a half. And I will again have be directing the appropriate technology class. Right, so I can show you. And the appropriate technology class is a service learning class where groups of students work with partners. And so right now, we aren't sure that Hawazin is going to have a group because she's very busy. So we may drop this one. Salma will very likely have a group, as well as Peter Keller, and another group by Bob Freeling. Now, Peter, have you heard of Solar Electric Lighting Fund?
No, there's dozens of organizations doing electrical things, and
Yeah.
it's hard to sort them all out.
So they serve a slightly upscale clientele from you, right? They work with villages that have means to buy stuff.
Yeah, we try to find the poorest people, and so
Yeah.
yes, we plan to make ISEC one of our products, but we will not be distributing it in the villages, but more likely in the city where people have the money to buy them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, my interest, I'm very interested in looking at refugee camps. And
Oh, you got over 1 million customers there.
we have a group dedicated to work with Alexis. We have a group dedicated to work with Bijanga. We have a group dedicated to making chocolate in Ghana, and one dedicated to the United States for our our homeless situation. We have a group working in these compressed rice straw blocks that I told you about, and they will also be working very likely with Salma. And this same guy has a company called Ranch Wi-Fi that provides Wi-Fi for rural areas. And they have an enormous waste stream of good electronics that they would like to get to Africa after, you know, they've been replaced by a better model. And lastly, there's a Peace Corps recruiter who has started a business. It's a tourism business, but it only works with local people that want to have a tourism company. So if you are a community, for instance, in Uganda, Peter, and there's a community that would like to host American tourists, this company would set them up, for instance.
I'd be pleased to talk with them.
Oh, very good. I'll be glad to put you together. He's going to give a talk at my class. So maybe you just if you go to the timeline, I believe he's in week 5. Where is this guy? Ah, there he is, in week 3. So when 3, you're welcome to come to class, or potentially we will have it online.
Okay, that's October 6th. Okay.
All right. Okay, I also just realized I'm still recording the meeting, so I'm going to stop